O Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavividitam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grinanti Bhuridayanaha. So in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we are going to start on page 112 in my book. The date is 24th August 1882. 24th August 1882. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to Hajra on the long northeast veranda of his room when M arrived. He saluted the master reverently. Master, I should like to visit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar a few times more. So let's just remember that this is all very close to the date when he visited Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So we had this long dialogue between Vidyasagar and Sri Ramakrishna. And so that's what he's referring to when he sees M come in and Sri Ramakrishna says, I would like to visit Vidyasagar a few more times. Though he did not actually, it never happened. I should like to visit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar a few times more. The painter first draws the general outlines and then puts in the details and colors at his leisure. The molder first makes the image out of clay, then plasters it, then gives it a coat of whitewash, and last of all paints it with a brush. All these steps must be taken successively. Vidyasagar is fully ready, but his inner stuff is covered with a thin layer. He is now engaged in doing good works, but he doesn't know what is within himself. Gold is hidden within him. God dwells within us. If one knows that, one feels like giving up all activities and praying to God with a yearning soul. So here, it's interesting to note, he's making a profound point about the philosophy of life itself. A lot of people, especially in today's world, when it's a very highly secularized world, so a lot of people, good people, they think that the best one can do is to be a good person in this world. And that seems to be obvious, and there's nothing beyond this. And that was somehow the philosophy of life adopted by Vidyasagar. If you remember the dialogue we had, M summarized Vidyasagar's perspective. Vidyasagar was very learned. He had read the texts. He was acquainted with Eastern and Western thought. And his whole idea about spirituality was that he says one cannot really know that ultimate reality. So the best that one can do is lead a good life and be of use to others. And it sounds great. Why not? And that's the best possible life such people imagine in today's world. It's a widespread belief, especially among the elite and intelligent people, and that's the best of them. There are rest of people, large numbers of people who don't even think that. Large numbers of people are just after sense pleasures, money, status, and fame, and praise from others, relationships, whatever it is. That's what the majority are seeking. And the best among them subscribe to this view that let's lead a good life and be of use to others. Sri Ramakrishna is giving an answer to this worldly view of life. He's saying there's something higher than even the best possible life of this world. That the ultimate reality which spirituality talks about, the world religions talk about as God, Brahman, the Tao, or the Nirvana, it is real. It's not something that cannot be known. It's not something that is fictional. It's not something that was imagined by primitive people. But now that we are advanced and we have so much science and knowledge of the world and universe, we have to get rid of all of that. No, it is actually real. And it is actually very, very worthwhile. Far more than even the best possible life that we can imagine in this world. And that has to be sought. And it can be realized by everybody. He does not say that only I have realized it and you have to believe me. No, every one of us can. And he wants every one of us to pursue spirituality. So that's the tremendous, that is a very profound point he's making. Sri Ramakrishna, we call him the Yuga Avatara, the incarnation of the age. And he seems to be completely out of tune with this age, with his insistence on renunciation of lust and gold, with his extremely simple, almost rustic lifestyle. He was only semi-literate. In this age, day and age, he seems to be completely the opposite of what this age is about. And yet, I think that's why it's important. That's the importance of the Ramakrishna Avatara. In this day and age, he stands as a beacon of spirituality, that the accumulated spiritual wisdom of the world civilizations across the millennia, it stands for something real. It is real. God exists. God can be realized. And indeed, that is the goal of life. So this is what he's saying when he's talking about it. Vidyasagar. Vidyasagar is representative of perhaps the best that today's agnostic secular worldview can offer. Good man of high character, who is utterly committed to the social uplift of people around him, well-being of others. What could be better than that? Sri Ramakrishna is saying that there is something better than that. There is something higher and deeper than that. He says, if one knows that, one feels like giving up all activities and praying to God with a yearning soul. Remember, what activities is he talking about? Not just the pursuit of power and pleasure in the world. He's talking about the wonderful activities being undertaken by Vidyasagar. He says one will go beyond that also. There is something higher than that, something deeper than that. So the master talked with M, now standing, now pacing up and down the long veranda. Master, a little spiritual discipline is necessary in order to know what lies within. M, is it necessary to practice discipline all through life? So notice the underlying sequence in the development of thought. So there is this higher thing available to all of us, and we must pursue that. Then the next question will be, how do you get it then? And Sri Ramakrishna is saying a little spiritual discipline is necessary. What kind of discipline? How long are we supposed to do that? Spiritual discipline means practices, prayer, meditation, Vedantic inquiry, devotion, all of that. So are we, is it necessary to practice discipline all through life? Discipline means spiritual practices. Master, no. But one must be up and doing in the beginning. After that, one need not work hard. The helmsman stands up and clutches the rudder firmly as long as the boat is passing through waves, storms, high wind, or around the curves of a river. But he relaxes after steering through them. As soon as the boat passes the curves and the helmsman feels a favorable wind, he sits comfortably and just touches the rudder. Next, he prepares to unfurl the sail and gets ready for a smoke. Likewise, the aspirant enjoys peace and calm after passing the waves and storms of lust and gold. This also answers an important question. Many people feel that, so the spiritual path it must be endless. The answer is yes and no. First of all, Sri Ramakrishna says, no, it is not endless. There is a definite end. There is a definite culmination. Once you find God, in whichever way, devotionally, God becomes real to you. Through Vedantic inquiry, you realize the truth which is within yourself in your own experience. Or through yogic meditation, mystic experience of God. Whichever way, when God becomes real for you, in one sense, that's the end. In another sense, that's the beginning. But after that, whatever happens, you're dwelling in the reality of God. Maybe many spiritual experiences may come and go after that. But that realization of God, so that is the culmination of our spiritual practice. So he says that that is the goal, and there is an end to all this. There is a time when your practices and hard work ends and you just enjoy the pension, the spiritual pension. Now he says, initially in your spiritual practices, initially there's hard work. And that hard work, he says, there are the storms of lust and gold, and they have to be passed. And he gives nice examples because he lived, remember, he lived on the bank of the Ganga, and he saw these boatmen every day. So what he saw, he's using that as an example. Some are born with the characteristics of the yogi, but they should be careful. They too should be careful. It is lust and gold alone that is the obstacle. It makes them deviate from the path of yoga and drags them into worldliness. Perhaps they have some desire for enjoyment. After fulfilling their desire, they again direct their minds to God and thus recover their former state of mind, fit for the practice of yoga. Have you ever seen the spring trap for fish called the shotka call? No, sir, I have never seen it. I haven't seen it. So remember, Sri Ramakrishna is giving these examples from his village life. So M being a city person, he hasn't seen these things. Master, they use it in our part of the country. One end of a bamboo pole is fastened in the ground and the other end is bent over with a catch. From this end, a line with a hook hangs over the water with bait tied to the hook. When the fish swallows the bait, suddenly the bamboo jumps up and regains its upright position. Again, take a pair of scales, for example. If a weight is placed on one side, the lower needle moves away from the upper one. The lower needle is the mind and the upper one God. The meeting of the two is yoga. Unless the mind becomes steady, there cannot be yoga. It is the wind of worldliness that always disturbs the mind, which may be likened to a candle flame. If that flame doesn't move at all, then one is said to have attained yoga. Now, all right, let me read a little more, I'll come back again. Lust and gold alone is the obstacle to yoga. Always analyze what you see. What is there in the body of a woman? Only such things as blood, flesh, fat, entrails, and the like. Why should one love such a body? Sometimes I used to assume a rajasic mood in order to practice renunciation. Once I had the desire to put on a gold embroidered robe, wear a ring on my finger, and smoke a hubble bubble with a long pipe. Mathur Babu procured all these things for me. I wore the gold embroidered robe and said to myself after a while, mind, this is what is called a gold embroidered robe. Then I took it off and threw it away. I couldn't stand the robe anymore. Again, I said to myself, mind, this is called a shawl, and this a ring, and this smoking a hubble bubble with a long pipe. I threw those things away once for all, and the desire to enjoy them never arose in my mind again. It was almost dusk. The master and M stood talking alone near the door on the southeast veranda. Master, to M, the mind of the yogi is always fixed on God, always absorbed in the self. You can recognize such a man by merely looking at him. His eyes are wide open with an aimless look, like the eyes of the mother bird hatching her eggs. Her entire mind is fixed on the eggs, and there is a vacant look in her eyes. Can you show me such a picture? M. I shall try to get one. As evening came on, the temples were lighted up. Sri Ramakrishna was seated on his small couch, meditating on the Divine Mother. Then he chanted the names of God. Incense was burnt in the room where an oil lamp had been lighted. Sounds of conch shells and gongs came floating on the air as the evening worship began in the temple of Kali. The light of the moon flooded all the quarters. Okay, as we go on, before that, let me go back a little bit. He says, take a pair of scales. If a weight is placed on one side, the lower needle moves away from the upper one. The lower needle is the mind and the upper one, God. The meeting of the two is yoga. So obviously the weight which is put on the scales is the world, desires, worldly desires, and that makes the lower needle move away from the upper needle. Unless the mind becomes steady, there cannot be yoga. Another example, it is the wind of worldliness that always disturbs the mind, which may be likened to a candle flame. If the flame doesn't move at all, then one is said to have attained yoga. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. And so this one important, very important point he makes here about the importance of attention in spiritual life. I often speak about the Vedantic path, where we inquire into our experience and then we realize what we are and then stabilize ourselves in our reality. And the realization comes, Aham Brahmasmi. That's the direct path. But one thing I'll take this occasion, that every path, whether the direct Vedantic inquiry path or meditation on God, devotion to God, whatever the yoga that we practice, the currency is attention. It's a very important secret to know, whether it's for worldly success, but also especially for spiritual life. Whatever one, Swami Vivekananda later said that the key to knowledge, whether worldly knowledge or spiritual knowledge, is concentration of mind, focus of mind. The sign of a worldly mind is a scattered mind, scattered in 100 different directions. The inability to hold on to hold on focus and put the mind on one object. And that usually happens because of desire, as he says there, that if a weight is put on the pants on one side, then the lower needle moves away from the upper needle. Even in karma yoga, the practice of converting our work into spiritual practice, spiritualizing our daily work, you see, even the idea that I will do good to others, it's interesting. Attention is important there. I'll tell you why. A recent experiment a few years ago performed in a university here, the psychologist Jonathan Haidt talks about it. He said that in a particular school here, in a university, this experiment was performed on empathy for others. What is the source of empathy? Is it knowledge or something else? So a group of students, they were asked to study the story of the Good Samaritan, the well-known story where somebody goes out of his way to help a stranger. It's from the Bible, and takes care of the sick stranger and nurses that stranger. So the idea being sacrificing your time and energy and helping somebody else out of sheer sympathy for that person, even though that person doesn't belong to your family or your community. It was a Samaritan was not a part of the mainstream Jewish community there. So that topic was studied, and they were told that you have to prepare a speech on this, like a sermon, and you have to go across the hall, from this hall, cross that big lawn and go to the other hall and give a talk about this topic. That's the Good Samaritan. And like any psychological exercise, there is a double bind. There is a control group which was given some other story from the Bible to study, and told that you have to prepare a talk on this and go and across the lawn and give a talk in that hall. There'll be somebody there. And so they studied quickly and they prepared a little talk, and they were sent one by one across the lawn. And as they crossed the lawn to what they thought was the lecture hall, on the lawn, on a bench, somebody was sitting there, one of those experimenters was sitting there, and when this person came, he would double over as if in pain and groan, to see if that person would pay attention and come and ask, can I help you? Is something wrong? Are you okay? And so they did that for everybody. And then they tallied up the results, and when they would cross the lawn and go to the other hall, when each of them reached, they would be told experiment is over. You don't have to give a talk. There's no audience, nothing. You can go home. And then they collated the results, and the results were quite interesting. It made no difference. It made no difference what they were studying. Somebody had studied the story of the Good Samaritan, which was all about helping a sick person on the wayside. Literally, what happened to them as they crossed the lawn? Somebody on the wayside who is sick. Did not make any difference. Some of them helped, some of them stopped to help and ask questions about how this person was. Many of them didn't stop, didn't notice at all. Now, what was the key determinant? The key determinant was attention. Did they notice or not? Many of them were too busy, prepared, rehearsing the points, the talk they were going to give there about how one should help others. And because they were so busy in their mind, they didn't even notice this person sitting there. And that attention was the key determinant. Those who noticed, many of them were much more likely to help. The others, they passed, they saw this person, it didn't register because the mind, attention was elsewhere. So it's not the knowledge. The conclusion was ethics, ethical behavior is not so much about knowledge, not so much about the knowledge, the philosophy, the understanding of what is right and wrong, as it is about attention, especially sympathy. And there's a whole, it seems there's a whole neuroscience which has grown around this. They talk about mirror neurons. We have, when somebody is in pain, similar kinds of neuronal activity are detected in a person who is showing sympathy. You feel this, you mirrored the suffering of that person to some extent, even neurologically. So, serving others, taking care of others requires attention. The oft-quoted thing that somebody is suffering on the near the subway in New York. People talk about it, how people are rushing past, even stepping over that person without asking. But if one person stops and tries to help that person, lying on the floor, on the sidewalk, many others stop and they offer their help. The difference is attention. In big cities, for example, life is so fast, especially here in New York. So there's a paucity of attention. Attention is important for caring. Many more people would be much more caring if that crucial factor of attention were there, if they paid attention to the sufferings of people around, if they're not so much caught up in their own issues, or either busy with work or busy with the hassles of their family life or whatever, or just involved too much with themselves. So attention is important for karma yoga. There was this interesting study, I mentioned this earlier. The insurance companies, they studied which of the doctors were getting sued more here in the United States. And litigation is such a big factor here. So the insurance companies were, of course, interested in knowing that. So that would decide the insurance premiums and all. And they couldn't find any factor, because it seems they thought at first you might think that the more qualified doctors would be less likely to be sued, the less qualified ones would be, or whatever it is. No, they couldn't find anything like that. And I think there was no clear correlation until they found one factor. That's just the impression. If the patient liked the doctor, it was much less likely that the patient would sue the doctor. That's all. And that depended a lot on the doctor paying attention. It did not depend on the expertise of the doctor, did not depend upon the qualifications, what medicine school he had gone to, did not depend upon the awards the doctor had gone, or how famous the doctor was. Didn't depend so much on that. Just on the attention, the personal rapport that the doctor was able to set up with the patients. And that sounds reasonable, actually, when you think about it. Then in bhakti yoga, again, love of God actually depends on attention. We all say that the love of God is important, bhakti yoga, love God, and that itself is enough. But you keep on asking, how will I love God? I don't have that feeling. I may have a little bit of it, but not much. Attention. We cannot artificially generate love for God, maybe, but what we can do is control our attention. The more you deliberately pay attention in puja, in prayer, in meditation, in devotional singing, the more and more attention deliberately is paid to the deity, you will see automatically, it is inevitable, an attachment will grow with the deity. That's how worldly attachments grow. Anything in the world, it could be a pet, it could be a relative, it could be a gadget, it could be a place you stay in, whatever it is. It's that familiarity, that attention, that closeness, the repetition, that leads to attachment, and then finally to a kind of love or maybe even obsession or whatever it is. With God also the same thing. So how do you develop bhakti? Again, attention. So attention is important. Then Raja Yoga, the path of meditation. Here, of course, the whole thing is just attention. It's all about attention. What is meditation? It's basically control of attention, nothing else. It's what we do with the limited amount of cognitive capacity present to us. Instead of scattering it in 100 different directions in the world, this is the exercise of which has solely to do with attention. Collecting our attention away from the world and focusing it on one thing. It could be your breath, it could be a deity, it could be a mantra, whatever it is. But attention on that. Focus, concentration is the key to success everywhere. Somebody was saying that what is the difference between us and Gandhi and Lincoln and Einstein? This is the difference. This is all of us, all of them and us, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. The difference was what they did with those 24 hours in a day. They deliberately did something consistently. That's focus. Now you might say, I can't do deliberately, do something consistently. I have 100 different demands on my time. All right, but those 100 different demands, you can do each one of them with full attention. So that's open to us, developing the power of attention. That is Raja Yoga. And the secret of meditation, Swami Vivekananda says, do everything with the fullest possible attention. Do whatever you're doing with the fullest possible attention. No esoteric techniques of meditation, breathing, posture, all those things are very good. But the secret there is make a habit of attention. Whatever you're doing, you do it with the fullest possible attention. That trains the mind to attention. Many people have done that. And there are academics, I know people, especially at Harvard a couple of years back, I noticed that one thing common to all these very brilliant people, whether students or faculty, they all had, to a greater or lesser extent, the ability to focus, to cut everything away and focus on something. And they love to do that. Famous professors are like that, faculty, other faculty members, and students. I saw this. This is something important, worth learning for everybody, and young people especially. The ability to focus and hold the focus. Swami Vivekananda's, Vivekananda's this logo he designed for the Ramakrishna mission. If you remember, there is the waters and the sun rising in the back, the lotus blooming, and the swan swimming in the waters, and the whole thing encircled by a serpent, like a cobra. It's supposed to be by the harmony of 4 yogas, one realizes God. The Hamsa, the swan swimming in the water, the Hamsa symbolizes the Supreme Spirit, or Brahman, God, whatever you call it. And the lotus is devotion. The waters are karma and your activities throughout your day. And the sun rising is the sun of knowledge. But the serpent encircling the whole thing is the power of yoga. Swami Vivekananda said it's the power of concentration, power of yoga. Now, he has explained this logo. By the way, the logo was designed in the Vedanta Society of New York. Many people don't know that. When he was here in New York, Swami Vivekananda, one of his lectures was about to be published in a pamphlet, and the printer came to meet him. He was a Dutchman. He came to meet him and he said, Swami, could you give us a logo? It would be nice to put a logo on the cover of the booklet, the pamphlet. And Swami Vivekananda was sitting for breakfast. On a napkin, he sketched something, and then he tossed it. The description is that he tossed it across the table and he said, draw it to scale and then you can print it. And somebody asked him what's the meaning, and he explained. Now, there are 2 explanations he's given on 2 different occasions, almost the same thing, but slightly different. The well-known explanation is this. The lotus is bhakti, the wavy waters are karma, the sun is jnana, and the serpent encircling the whole thing is power of Kundalini, or the power of meditation. That's one. Another place, he actually writes an explanation of this logo. He says, when the power of yoga, that is concentration, that serpent, is joined to knowledge, devotion, and action, then the Supreme Soul is attained, or God is attained. Now notice, instead of saying 4 yogas, he said these 3: knowledge, devotion, action. All of them is yoked the power of yoga, that is the power of attention. Nobody seems to have picked up on that, but I noticed it immediately, that slight change of tone there. So power of attention is very important, and of course it is important in karma, it is important in bhakti, but the path of meditation is the path of controlling attention par excellence. That's actually the whole point of the path of meditation, is controlling attention. I remember last year we did the retreat in Garrison Institute, and it was on meditation. But as Professor Arindam Chakravarti said, after talking about different traditions of meditation, Buddhist meditation, meditation in Kashmiri Shaivism, meditation in devotional religion, dualistic religion, meditation in non-dualism, after all of that, he said, one session you just think over how these are different and what is common to all techniques of meditation. A little bit of thought led me to realize there's only one thing common to all techniques of meditation. It is the control of attention. No technique of meditation can work with scattering of attention. Every technique of meditation at least has one component where attention is gathered and focused on something. So that is the path of meditation, yoga, Raja Yoga. In the path of knowledge also, again, importance is missed often. Attention is very important. I've noticed the crucial difference between studying something, even understanding it, and then stopping there and saying that I sort of get what you are saying, but I'm not enlightened, I'm not making that breakthrough. The difference is, studying and understanding, that's one. Deepening that understanding leads to enlightenment. And that deepening is only a matter of attention. To sit with it intently, to throw yourself into it, not only with one's intellect, but with one's heart, with one's whole being, and trying to make that, to immerse oneself in it. Sri Ramakrishna says, instead of letting the flame of the mind flicker here and there, keep it steady, focused on that one understanding. Of course, the understanding must be there. You must listen to the classes, study the text, think about it, and get a general view of what is going on. And your doubts also must be set at ease, or the questions you have got should also be resolved. After that, that intense focus of attention is needed for a while. And Sri Ramakrishna makes it crucial. He says, this is the mind of the yogi. This focus, this non-flickering nature. These days, especially with computer, internet, social media, the attention is the one which is endangered. A lot of psychologists are beginning to realize this. Educationists, teachers. Daniel Goleman, the person who popularized the term EQ, emotional intelligence. So a few years back, he wrote another book, Focus. And in the introduction, he says, I had to pay attention to attention because I was approached by so many parents, teachers, even those who those who hire for corporate jobs, and students, youngsters also. There's this widespread malaise of attention, of flickering mind. So there was even a book called Flickering Mind many years ago, well before the age of social media, and 20 years ago. There was a study of the impact of computers in schools 20 years ago. And there was a book on that. The name of the book was The Flickering Mind. I had read it long ago in a school in the Ramakrishna Mission about several years ago. But the name is so evocative, The Flickering Mind. At that time, computer screens were flickering screens. That is gone. Now we have high-tech, very steady screens now. Screens are very focused, minds are completely unfocused. And of course, there's this whole thing which has come up recently, that the entirety of Silicon Valley is based on what is called the attention economy. And in internet, so much is available and quite freely. It really does not matter if you can provide good content anymore. It's all about money, of course, for these providers, but good content is apparently it's not enough. A lot of good content is there. Why will they see only you? So the idea is to somehow hook your attention. Why? Because if you pay attention, then these people can put advertisements on their websites and get money, but they must make sure you pay attention. So one of the ways to make sure you pay attention is to train your attention and to draw your attention. One of the ways to draw your attention, for example, they saw one hook is anger. And so they find out the way the issues you are angry about, political issues, religious issues, and they'll keep feeding you that news more and more. So you focus on that. Sri Ramakrishna said, primary things which disturb the mind, which disturb our attention, the weight of worldliness which pulls the lower needle away from the higher needle, he says, is lust and gold. The strong desire for sensual enjoyments, worldly enjoyments, possession, and also associated power, status, all of that. Temptation and terror. These are the two things which affect the mind immediately. So one must deliberately stay away from that. Sri Ramakrishna compares them to storms. And he also says, if you make a serious effort, those storms will die away after some time. With practice and with maturity, the storms will lessen and die away. It will not be such a struggle after some time. So that's the gospel of attention. I remember when we were kids in school, the teachers would yell at us to, keep quiet, stay still. They would always invariably say, pay attention. And that's a quite wonderful phrase, pay attention. It's like paying money. That's the currency we have. That's the currency of our life. More important than money. It is what we are paying attention to. A psychologist said, what you attend to and how much attention you put on that can make the difference between heaven and hell. That determines the quality of your life. Milton's quote I like very much. I've quoted it a number of times. The mind in its own place can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. The mind in its own place, the mind by itself. How does it do that? One factor is attention, one central factor. What I focus on and how much of my mind I put there. There are many things that may pull my mind, but I don't have to put all my mind there. Minimum attention to those things, maximum attention to what is important, nourishing, and good in my life. So Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Brahmananda used to tell young monks that all the work that is given in the ashram for you, with schools, colleges, hospitals, he said with 1/4 of the mind you can do all that work. If you give 3/4 of the mind to God, what happens is we give 3/4 of our mind to the world and then struggle to retain 1/4 on God, and that becomes a struggle for us. Psychologists have also discovered there is a joy of attention, focus, concentration. Those who have done anything with focus or concentration, studies, music, anything, they know that a very nourishing experience is when you do something challenging with a lot of attention. And those are some of the best times of your life. All right, enough about attention. Let me just see if there is any comments about this. Jim said, I have a definition of fear as the frantic flickering of attention. True. Flickering of attention, and also flickering of the mind, but also, fear and temptation, terror and temptation are what focuses our mind also, but helplessly. it draws our mind out to that object which is, or the situation which is creating the fear or the temptation, and it holds it there. We are helplessly held there for a while and then let go, and it's usually always useless and always harmful. Abhijit says from talks with Ramana Maharshi, question, are there any signs which will indicate the aspirant spiritual progress? Maharshi says the degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts and the degree of concentration on a single thought are the measures to gauge the progress. Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. A lot of our suffering also in the world, a lot of suffering is due to the attention we pay to those things. Most of the suffering would go away if our attention were not there on that. I've told you this earlier, but I'll repeat it. I'd been invited to speak at a medical conference, and the theme of the conference was pain. So one of the sessions was talk therapies for managing pain. And in that, there were spiritual therapies, and I was one of the speakers. But a doctor, he gave this introductory talk, and he said, the way we manage pain by giving medicines, drugs, is not effective. He says it's a dirty secret in the pharmaceutical industry that painkillers don't work well. They work, but they don't work well. Half the time they work, half the time they do not work. They do not save you from pain, but all the time they will give you side effects. That much is guaranteed. And then he drew, I still remember, he drew these 3 circles. Innermost circle is the actual physical discomfort, pain. And this is, of course, about chronic pain, not acute pain. Chronic pain, continuous pain, sometimes back pain is like that, and other things. So whatever is a kind of chronic discomfort for you. So innermost circle is the actual physical discomfort. The middle circle is the anxiety regarding that pain. It's going to hurt again. It's going to start now. Again, the pain is going to come. That kind of continuous reflection by attention is on the suffering. That is the bigger circle. And the widest circle outside is the social problems related with the pain. I can't go to a friend's birthday party. I can't do this or that because of the pain. So many problems I have in society, in work, because of my pain. And he said, the innermost circle, the actual physical pain, that's the only thing that a painkiller can address. And that also ineffectively. That one is only 20% of the total suffering. 80% of the total suffering is because of what we think about that pain. In chronic pain. Acute pain is a different thing altogether. But chronic pain is a thing. And notice here, attention. So many cases, I know I've seen some and read many about senior monks, sadhakas, who there is physical pain. We hardly seem to be aware of it, because the minds are powerfully given to something very high and noble. That I have told you the story about earlier, maybe Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda, he was a president, and in his old age he suffered terribly, many problems. Asthma was one of them, breathlessness. So once whole night he was unable to sleep. He had to sit up supporting himself with pillows. So he's the president of the order. The word got around. So next in the morning, when the monks came to bow down to him, somebody asked, Swami, how are you? And Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda said, I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm good. And they said, but Maharaj, we heard you couldn't sleep last night because of breathlessness, because of asthma. Then he looked startled and he said, oh, you mean the body? Not good at all, not good at all. See, I am fine. He didn't even relate it to the body. Once, another time, Mahapurush Maharaj, he was going to Banaras, and he had a Tonga accident. There was the horse-drawn carriage got into accident. He was hurt, and late that night he developed a very severe, very intense fever, I think. And then next day in the morning it was gone. And he said, last night Baba Vishwanath, that means Shiva in Banaras, he came to me and he separated these two. He just said these two. Separate these two means I, the conscious self, and the body. So, yes, but from our perspective, the attention given to God or the self within. And Sri Ramakrishna also says this here, later on he says, the mind of the yogi is always fixed on God, always absorbed in the self. Notice, always fixed on God, G-O-D, comma, always absorbed in the self, capital S self, not small self. Our mind is always absorbed in the self. That doesn't mean we are yogis. Our mind is absorbed in the self means the body mind. So both are actually equivalent. Whether you are in deep devotion, you're continuously thinking about your Ishta Devata, or you're absorbed in the witness consciousness. You are aware that you are that. Absorbed in that means you are aware that you are that. It's not shaken. One more point I'd like to mention. Yes, so what Raman Maharshi says here is absolutely right. That is one great indicator of progress. Notice, he does not say he's a great teacher of non-dual Vedanta. Who? Raman Maharshi. So he does not say here the progress is, how far have you gone in understanding who am I? That's what he would always ask, find out who I am. He does not say that. It does not, progress does not depend on how many classes you have completed, how many texts you have read, how many verses you have memorized. No. It depends on how can you remain focused deeply on God in whichever form. Notice all the intense practices which the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna did after the Mahasamadhi of Sri Ramakrishna. All of them. What were they doing? All of them had got to some degree or the other enlightenment. By the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, they had various experiences, including some like Narendranath up to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So what else were they doing? For that intense years and years of very serious practices in hills and jungles and mountains, begging for their food, at the risk of their health. Many of their health broke down. What were they doing? They were getting deeply absorbed in that which they had already found. By the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, they had already got that realization in various forms, but they made it a steady, unwavering light within themselves. Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shivananda, they were asked, what are you doing? And they said, what he has given us, we are making it our own. This is the thing. Effortlessly being. And is there any end to this process? Yes. They all went through this phase and they all came out of this phase. And the direct disciples, they all had a phase in their lives where they were going around, radiating that peace and blessing others and helping others. So that means they reached a phase where they were the calm, where they are well settled in the spiritual realization. And then Sangeeta says, how does one prevent attentiveness and deep concentration from becoming obsessive compulsive? Obsessive compulsive is generally with something lower. Obsessive compulsive is often a sign of tamas or rajas. So attention or concentration as such is a sign of sattva, sattvic mindset. Notice one thing about the obsessive compulsive mindset, that it is it's out of your control. You can't control it. You become a victim to it. Some have these OCD behaviors. They can helplessly trying. Some keep on washing their hands. We used to call it a washing mania or a purity mania. Many kinds of obsessive, and they are all usually unproductive. They're not helping in any way, in any worldly way, academic way, in your music, in your art, creativity, let alone spirituality. In no way it is helping. But it is true that in at least some of the non-spiritual areas like art or science, often it can be difficult to distinguish between an obsession and concentration. Many of the great scientists, why great scientists? A lot of people and we also know, who are researchers, who are writers, musicians, their practice, their research can often seem very obsessive. And it's good in a way. And that's what leads to results. But definitely, if it's a useless behavior, even a harmful behavior, and we can't get out of it, we feel captured by that behavior rather than us practicing it deliberately, then it's a typical tamasic or rajasic mindset, tamasic especially. Often OCD at the level of pathology is basically tamasic. Kiran says, is being in the present same as paying attention? True. But, nowadays it's very popular, this living in the present, paying, this all comes out of the mindfulness movement. It's good because we tend to live too much in our minds. I think somebody said funnily that, in the old slapstick comedies, we used to laugh at people who slip on a banana peel. The actor slips and falls down and the audience laughs. We're always doing that. Either we're slipping on the banana peel and falling down backwards into the past, or slipping and stumbling forwards into the future. We're not standing up straight where we are in our present. So the tendency of the mind is to dwell on something in the future, expectation or anxiety. If this happens, what if this happens? There's one, dwelling in the future. What if? The other one is expectation. If only, what if, if only. And in the past, either those days were so good, or regrets about the past, or nostalgia about the past. That is slipping on the banana peel, either forwards or backwards. So it is good to be in the present. However, let me add here, our sadhana in all the paths of Vedanta, whether it's devotional, knowledge, or meditation, more than just being present, it is a positive practice of a mantra or Vedanta vichara, or a yogic meditation technique, or being present to the person you are helping, whether it's in the school or in a hospital. Not just trying to be present in the moment. That is a preliminary practice, I would say. Notice all these yogic practices, or the Vedantic, the Vedanta vichara, or the bhakti practices, they will all help you to stay in the present. Not necessarily though. I mean, I know enough that one can do a long and complicated puja only half-heartedly. Once it becomes mechanical, once you learn all the mantras and you do the same rituals day after day, it can become quite mechanical. So yes, one must also be present to what one is doing. Vishwanathan says, sometimes weathering those storms is very difficult and we sometimes get swept away by them. Is it a matter of practice to keep up with the struggle and have faith that eventually we will be strong enough to hold on? Certainly. And in the end, we will all win. You are that reality. God is always with you. You are Atman. What can ultimately defeat you? Nothing can defeat you ultimately. With that conviction, you move forward. Do not worry about what has gone in the past. Absolutely not. There's nothing compared to the glory of the reality within each of us. I've seen in those sadhus whom I consider to be really spiritually evolved, they pay so little attention to our defects, and they would praise our good qualities to the sky. We thought just paltry good qualities, nothing particularly great about it, but they would praise those little things in us to the skies. And what we felt were major defects in our life or character or spiritual practice, they would make very light of it. They wouldn't bother about it. They would just say that, go on, try, make a change, do better next time, and go ahead. By the grace of, they always say, by the grace of God, it will be better. You will overcome this. And it's true. It is true. Siddharth says, what is the difference between paying focused attention to something and being addicted to something? Again, the voluntary control over it. And another thing, addiction is generally detrimental to our psychological and finally physical well-being, but also psychological well-being. In the book Flow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who has spent his lifetime in studying attention. So I'd highly recommend reading at least that one book of his, for the first one, Flow. So he calls these sustained periods of attention to a worthwhile object of attention. So sustained attention to a worthwhile object of attention. He calls them flow experiences, and he says these are some of the best experiences of our life. It could be anything what we do deliberately, something good for us. It could be in our career, in our spiritual practice, could be a hobby, but deliberately cultivated attention. And he makes this point that flow experiences are always nourishing. He gives an example. Suppose you play a game of, you're watching a game of tennis on the TV, and you go out and play a game of tennis. And the difference is, what you're watching on the TV, that those may be professional players playing much better than you. And what you go out and play may not be at all as good as what you saw on TV. But the nourishment you get, the satisfaction you get by actually physically engaging, not just the physical part of it, active engagement of concentration, your powers, your faculties in a challenging game, that is much more nourishing than lying back on the couch and watching a very nice game on TV or a movie on TV. So he says these acts of passive engagement, he calls it passive enjoyment, or TV, movie, they also seem to be attention, because our whole attention is captured there. It is an engrossing movie or a television program, our whole attention is captured. So isn't it concentration? No. You will see at the end of that program, or children playing video games. So isn't it concentration? Tremendous concentration. Tremendous. Hour after hour they can go, they'll forego sleep and food and everything and play video games. So isn't it concentration? No. It is attention, continuous, deliberate attention, but see, it's a kind of addiction. How will you differentiate? The difference is this. The same amount of time, energy, and focus, if they had put, say they're reading a good book or learning something, whatever it is, at the end of the experience, they would, these are the words of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, you feel a greater degree of psychological integrity, a greater degree of psychological well-being and nourishment, a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of being more than you were earlier before the experience. Whereas the addictive experience, whether it is browsing internet, playing video games, or watching TV, or any kind of addictive, or playing, gambling addiction is there, many kinds of addictions are there. It may seem like concentration. Hours and hours may go there. After that, the result is you feel unwell. You feel a kind of psychological disintegration. You feel you have gone to a poorer state internally than you were at the beginning of the attention. There's a clear difference in inner well-being. And of course, afterwards, physical well-being is also affected. Are there any practices you would suggest to cultivate attention? So people like, I was just saying, this question was asked by Siddharth. So many people here, Siddharth especially, you all know people who are, the backgrounds you come from, I know. The backgrounds you come from, you all know people who have cultivated attention to an extraordinary level in math, in science, in fields of scientific research. I met this scientist at Harvard a couple of years back on a book launch. He is one of the noticed physicists, material science, I think. He discovered a new kind of crystal. And the name of the book is The Second Kind of Impossible. Name of the book, Second Kind of Impossible. So he gave this talk on how he discovered that crystal. And then after the talk, in the Q&A, I asked him that my expertise is not physics, of course, but I want to know about your work and the kind of people who work with you over these years. What is the distinguishing characteristic of the way these people work, you and your colleagues, which would be a takeaway for people interested in education? And he said, well, you have seen how I conducted my research. If there is a problem which I want to solve, just standing in this huge auditorium, he said, if there's a problem I want to solve, I will go through the walls of this auditorium to get an answer to that problem. So you saw in my whole talk how I spent 40 years of my life searching for one crystal. See, that is focus. You can call it obsession or whatever it is, but it's a focus on something worthwhile. Second kind of crystal, new kind of crystal, fine, there's no doubt. But with that kind of focus, he could have realized God also. That's also true. I think it was Swami Ramakrishna or somebody, one senior monk, he said that the kind of intense energy the young people today pour into their examinations, with that much of effort, one can realize God. Which is encouraging, actually. Are there any practices you would suggest to cultivate attention? Read the book Flow. There are many interesting insights there, and they are very solid insights. There are many books on attention, especially these days, in the days of distraction, in the days of internet and all. Now there's a cottage industry writing books on attention. One good book I can recommend among all of these is a book called Cal Newport, his book on deep work. I think deep work. If you look it up, maybe I think that's the book. I benefited from that book. There are a number of such books, but Flow is a very solid work based on scientific studies over many years. And Swami Vivekananda's simple, powerful recommendation. You can't beat that. Do whatever you are doing with the fullest possible attention. Very soon you will find you have concentrated in study, in work, in meditation, all of that will come. Okay. So the whole day went in, whole class went in, attention. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.